Good morning to one and all. Today's topic is aggregates. Normally, for the construction of different kinds of roads, we will have to use these aggregates so that before going to construct a particular road, we need to know the basic properties and the characteristics of a aggregates. For that today we will have to discuss about these aggregates and their properties. Before going to today's class, once again we have to recollect a few points from yesterday's class. In the yesterday's class, I explained about two tests. That means first one is the CBR test. This is the apparatus which is used for calculation of CBR value. This CBR value is entirely done for how much amount of load that should the soil bears, so that we have to collect a few amount of soil sample from the fields. After that, those soil sample we have to collect and we need to test in the laboratory with the help of these CBR operators. In this particular CBR operators, we are having a mold of 150 mm dia. After that, we are having a plunger rod of 50 mm diameter. In the above plunger rod, we are having this proving ring. In the middle of the proving ring, we are having these dial gauges, and after that we are having another kind of dial gauges. With these two dial gauges, we have to measure the amount of pressure was on the soil sample and the amount of shrinking, that means amount of decrement or amount of settlement of a particular soil sample. By using those two dial gauges, we need to note down simultaneously. On one hand, we have to use some amount of pressure on the soil sample by using this plunger rod, and those pressure will be observed by the help of top dial gauge at the same amount. That means at the same time we need to observe what amount of pressure was obtaining on the particular soil sample, and relatively displacement also we need to observe with the help of these dial gauges, so that those two will be helpful to find the bearing pressure of a soil. So that this is the formula for normally this is the formula for calculation of CBR value. Load by normal load of a particular aggregate into 100, that will give the directly CBR value. That means load means at a 2.5 and 5 centimeter, that means 5 mm of that means the settlement. We need to find out the loads, relatively same decrements of a particular constant aggregates. Those two things we need to take and we need to observe one by one. That means first of all we need to take the soil sample value divided by aggregate value into 100, that will give the CBR value. These are the reasons where CBR will fails. Next one we are having is a plate bearing test. In this particular plate bearing test, we have to use four kinds of diameter plates. That means first of all we have to use 300 mm dia, after that 450, after that 600, after that 750, so that each ring having some dial gauges, so that we need to observe some quantity of pressure on the plates with the help of these jockey systems. After that we need to note down the settlements with respect to plates. 300 mm diameter, what is the settlement? 450 mm diameter, what is the settlement? Likely four plates we are having, so that we need to take those four measurements. These are the curve obtained after the readings are over with respect to simultaneously load and settlements. Those two things we need to take, and we have to draw a graph like this. After the k value we need to find, that means k is the constant value, load by settlement value. We need to have some two specimens. One is with soaking, another one is without soaking. We have to observe what is the difference between soaking sample and unsoaked samples, and simultaneously. Those are the tests: the plate loading test and soil bearing, that means California bearing ratio tests. Exclusively those two things we have to observe on soil samples only. Why? Because the total portion of the road will be laid on the soil sample, so that those load will be buried by soil or not. Those things we have to observe. Likely after the bearing pressure is over, we need to go for tests on aggregate. Why? Because those total compressive stresses will be buried by the aggregates. From after the aggregates is over, the total stress is going into the soil sample. So that the first major part of application of stress is road sample. So that on the road sample, what kind of aggregates we are using? Are those strong or weak samples? Those we have to find. First of all, what are the objectives involved in these particular aggregates? Totally four kinds of objectives are there. First one is the role of aggregate. That means role means మనకి aggregate అనేది అక్కడ ఎటువంటి వర్క్ని చేస్తుంది. ఇట్ ఈజ్ ఏ యాక్టివ్ కండిషన్ ఆర్ ఇన్ ఏ ప్యాసివ్ కండిషన్. యాక్టివ్ మీన్స్ the total aggregates are involved in the particular stress distribution. In some of the cases, aggregates are not involved in the stress distribution, simply they are in passive condition. So that we have to find out whether it is a active one or passive one. Next thing, we are having a source of aggregate. What is the major source? That means in our surrounding conditions of different areas, we are having huge quantity of hills and different rocky strata. So that those are the major source for the obtain of aggregates. So that we have to observe in what area we are having huge amount of strengthy aggregates. Is those aggregates are very strengthy or poor depending upon the soil strata and surrounding conditions. Why? Because huge amount of rocks are subtracted. That means huge amount of rocks are subjected to huge temperature pressures and atmospheric pressures. Due to those temperature and atmospheric and the surrounding conditions, the strength will be decreases. Why? Because huge amount of temperature means automatically there may be some quantity of decay or bond breaking, and automatically huge amount of rainfalls also in some cases. So that due to those rainfalls also, the top layers of the aggregates will be weakened due to entrainment of water. Automatically delineation or decaying of top layers will be takes place. So that we have to observe the surroundings, what kind of atmosphere is there, what quantity of rock is there, is it a basalt or any other quantity, what quantity we are having. Next one, properties of aggregates. That means we need to observe both physical properties and chemical properties. That means physical properties means shape, size, texture and color. All those comes under these physical properties. Next one, chemical properties means the basic ingredient in the particular aggregate. Normally we are having different quantities of chemical properties, basalt, different quantities. All those we studied in engineering geology. Different place to place we are having different nominal chemical structures. So that we have to observe both physical properties and chemical properties with respect to these properties. Next one, tests on aggregate. After the properties are over, we will go for testing. Why? Because without testing, simply we are giving that samples to the roads means it is not correct way. Why? Because before going to construct a particular project, we need to observe the parameters and properties and strengths and other things of a particular aggregates. After all tests are over, it is suitable for construction, then only we need to give permission to use the kind of aggregate. Otherwise we have to observe for a better quality of aggregates. So that we need to have some quantity of tests. That means simply compressive strength on aggregates and next one, durability tests. All those things we have to observe. Next one we are having is a combination of group or particle masses. That means different particles we are having. All those things we have to observe. It is a single particle or combination of different cases. That means, at the normally rocks are formed after the cooling of magma into number of years. That means cooling of magma with respect to number of years, so that there may be induction of a huge amount of surrounding soil strata or particles into the particular magma. Automatically the chemical composition also changes. So that we have to observe what is the combination of the particles. Is it a single one homogeneous particles or heterogeneous particles? All those things we have to observe. After that, uses with binding medium. That means binding means normally different kinds of binders. For rigid pavements, we are using cement as a binder. For fixed, next one we are having fixed pavements. We are having tar as a pavement. So that we have to observe what is the binding material we need to use. After that binding material is chosen, what quantity of binding material is sufficient. Why? Because some of the particles having shape and texture with respect to different natures, so that on a particular volume how much amount of voids are there, so that all the voids will have to fill by these binding materials. By observing how much amount of volume of particular matter is there, so that we have to observe is there any vibrations are required, or is there any amount of filling materials are required. All those things we have to observe by using this binding material content simply. Next one, 92.96 percentage of bituminous concrete and 70 to 80% of cement concrete. That means in the previous case we are having bituminous concrete first. After that we are having cement concrete. Bituminous concrete means normally in concrete major binding material is the cement, but in case of this bituminous concrete major binding material is the tar or bitumen. Normally bitumen is obtained from the waste material come from the petroleum industry, so that it is come as a waste material, we have to use it as a filling material for the construction of the roads. After that we are having 70 to 80% of cement concrete. Means cement concrete means flexible pavement and rigid pavement. In this particular rigid flexible pavement we are using this bituminous, and rigid pavement we are using this cement concrete. Why? Because the rigid pavements have to be used for areas those who are having huge amount of friction to contract the accident occurrence, so that 70 to 80% of aggregates are used in these particular rigid pavements. After that, sources. What are the sources we are having? Normally, two kinds of sources are there in this particular side. First one is the natural source obtained from large rock formations by quarrying. Normally, what is quarrying means simply if there is a natural source, that means resource, those natural resources we have to use for our construction activities and our daily utilities for the purpose of construction works. Whether it will be a building work or any other work, we have to use for our construction work. So that we are doing quarrying. That means simply quarrying means a large mass can be converting into small pieces of mass simply by blasting. After that, grinding, all those things takes place in particular quarrying. Excavated rock is crushed and to obtain aggregates in different sizes. Normally, at the time of blasting, we will obtain a large size masses of a particular matter. So after the quarry, the blasting is over, we need to transport those large size masses into the quarrying area. That means grinding agencies. We have to feed those large mass atoms into the feeding agencies. Those will convert those large atoms into a small pieces of atom of required sizes we will get. After the required sizes is over, we have to allot those sizes into different fields. If it is a construction purpose or bounders, we need to require normally 40 to 60 thickness rocks are used for a bounders for filling of ground surface. After that, 40 rocks are 40 size aggregates are normally used for the construction of slabs. After that, 20 aggregates also used for the construction of these beams and others. 10 5 aggregates are normally used for the filling purpose of different utilities of constructions. Next one, manufactured sources. These manufactured sources means nowadays we are having a huge quantity of industries. In those particular industries, we are having mainly thermal power plants and steel industries, aluminum industries. Likely, we are having different metal industries. So that in those metal industries, majorly we are using these ore materials for the construction for the purpose of generating this iron or aluminum or copper or any other metallic elements. After the metallic element process is over, we have to get some quantity of percentage of these waste materials from the industries, so that all those waste materials are simply filled on the particular earth surface, so that there may be no use, simply they are simply feeding on a particular land, so that it will there may be cause some quantity of disturbance. That means some quantity of simply they are using some quantity of land. Automatically whenever there is a rain, or whenever there is a huge amount of wind flow, or huge quantity of heat due to those external environmental parameters, all those matter will cause a huge amount of pollution to the environment, so that we have to use in a proper way in our construction purpose. Likely we are using different quantities of things, like as a coarse aggregates and fine aggregates. Normally those are all natural occurring. Simply by using in year by year, all those natural things will be disappears after few number of years, like 50 years or 60 years. There may be no hills or no any other natural resources for our construction purpose, so that we need to reduce the consumption of natural resources. Simply we have to use this industrial wastes in our construction purpose, simply by replacing a 30 to 50% or sometimes 60% also. We have to use these industrial wastes for our construction purpose. So that first one is a byproduct of industries. So that byproducts means normally a waste materials which was comes from the industries, so that we have to use, or we need to employ those waste materials in our construction purpose, in with the help of percentage of this sand or any aggregate. Aggregate means coarse aggregate, according to their fineness values. If the fineness value is much less than 4.75, it will be useful for the replacement of sand. It will be greater than 4.75, automatically it will be useful for the purpose of coarse aggregate. Next one we are having this brick ballast. Brick ballast means this brick industry is the major industry in our country. Why? Because nowadays we are constructing a huge quantity of houses with the help of these bricks. That means normally the total structure will have some quantity of binding materials and steels. After the binding material content and steel content is over, major quantity of this structure will occupy these brick loads. That means normally we are using these bricks for the construction purpose of walls and other retaining parts in our houses, so that these will occupy more quantity of volume in case of structure, so that we are using huge amount of these bricks for in our construction purpose and daily usages, so that these bricks having major occupation. While preparing these bricks, we are having some quantity of waste in the form of this brick ballast. These things also we have to use in our construction, roads and other things, etc. Next one, what are the aggregates we are having? All those things are the different kinds of aggregates. First one we are having igneous. Second major one we are having sedimentary. After that we are having metamorphic. Those three are the stages. Igneous means normally igneous means at huge amount of temperature. Normally we are having these volcanoes. It means volcanoes will eject some quantity of magma when there is a blasting. Automatically with the magma there may be some amount of gases and ash also coming, so that we have to use those ashes, volcanic ash, in the replacement of cement and other gases. Those are directly feeding into the environment. After that we have to cool those magma, and after the cooling is over, there may be formation of rocky strata. Those rocks simply we will call that as the igneous rocks. First of all we are having a cooling of magma. After the ejection of magma is over, the magma will be cooled for 100 of years. Means 100s or 50s of years the cooling is over. So that after the cooling is over, we have to use those cooled magma into aggregates. Next one, crystalline in structure. Crystalline means we have to use those magma into different areas. That means in different areas means in our construction we are having different quantities of particle sizes, so that according to those particle sizes we have to divide those magma into number of parts. Simply we need to classify huge quantity of rocks, after that small quantity of rocks, after that fineness values. All those things comes under this crystalline in structure. If the magma is a very good and reflective nature, automatically this is a crystalline nature. The magma is not crystalline, automatically it is not shiny, or we have to use for another purpose of construction. Next one, grain size classification, comma, compaction, not compaction, composition based classification. First of all, previously we divided the soils into categories according to this grain size distribution. Those are coarse grained soils, medium grained soils, and fine grained soils. After that, silty and clayey soils. Likely, in this particular aggregates also we are having different kinds of grain size classifications. Normally, those grain size we will represent with the number 40 mm, 60 mm, 60 mm aggregates we will call it as a boulders. After that, 40 mm aggregate, 20 mm, 10 mm, 4.5, 75 mm. Likely, we are having different sizes of aggregates. All those comes under this classification. Next one, composition based classification. That means whatever the material present in the particular rock strata, according to those also there may be composition. Means composition means involving of several things or materials in a particular matter. Those things we will call it as a simply composition. If we are simply doing a particular cooking, we have to in the cooking purpose we have to use several compositions of vegetables for a preparation of a curry. Likely in the environment or any other matter there may be huge amount of distribution of aggregates. That means huge amount of distribution of different quantities of matters. Like in our organic, that means in our chemistry we are having 108 elements. In the nature there may be no pure form of elements. That means all those are combining one to another due to this atmospheric activities like erosion and all other things. Those leads to this composition of different elements. All those are igneous. That means igneous means the materials forms when the lava is in molten state or flowing state. After the molten state is over, simply the lava will cools and having some quantity of shape and size according to this wind flow and gravity flow. So that hills are formed. Normally hills having huge amount of length. After that the total hill is not in a uniform shape. That means the total hill is not in a uniform shape. The hill having different altitudes and latitudes and sizes. On the top part of the hill we are having only peak. After that there may be some radial distribution with some irregularities. If we take a square, automatically all sides are equal. But in case of a hill, the all sides are not equal. Some quantities having huge height, some quantities having the decrement of height due to these gravity actions. So that sedimentary rocks are formed after the cooling of this magma, formed by various deposits. Deposit means in the atmosphere we are having some quantity of things. In the air also we are having different gases like oxygen, we are having carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, and methane. Likely several things are there in the atmosphere. So that in a different fields we are having different quantities in different percentages. So that whenever we are having, there may be a rock means automatically some quantity of this percentage also there. Automatically when there is a person in our classroom, simply he had నార్మల్లీ ఆ పర్సన్ అనేవాడు సెంటు కొట్టుకొని వస్తే మనకి ఏమొస్తుంది, క్లాస్ మొత్తం కూడా ఒక రకమైనటువంటి ఫ్రేగ్రెన్స్ అనేది వస్తూ ఉంటుంది. అదేవిధంగా అట్మాస్ఫియర్లో మనకి ఏదైనా గ్యాస్ ఉన్నప్పుడు ఆ గ్యాస్ యొక్క వాల్యూ అనేది మనకి ఏమవుతుంది, సరౌండింగ్స్లో మనకి వాటి మీద ఒక ఇంపాక్ట్ అనేది క్రియేట్ అవుతూ ఉంటుంది. సో దట్ దోస్ గ్యాసెస్ విల్ డైరెక్ట్లీ క్రియేట్ అన్ ఇంపాక్ట్ ఆన్ ద పర్టికులర్ సాయిల్ స్ట్రేటా ఆర్ రాక్ స్ట్రేటా అండ్ అదర్ individual things. So that the sedimentary rocks will form due to different deposits. Different deposits means different kinds of aggregate with different particle shapes and particle sizes and particle compositions. Next one, classification based on predominant mineral. Predominant mineral means in few places we are having these mineral deposits. Likely in our Andhra Pradesh we are having huge quantity of mica will be available in Nellore. After that, marble stone is available in Prakasam district. Next one, natural gas and other things will be available in East Godavari and KG basin. That means Krishna Godavari basin. After that, we are having Vijayanagaram and Srikakulam having some quantity of minerals, abrakam and other things. In Vizag, we are having some quantity of this steel mineral. That means hematite or magnetite. So that different places having different mineralogical compositions according to the availability of materials. So that those classification will be based upon predominant minerals in the soil strata. Those are also some quantity of importance in sedimentary rocks. Next one is metamorphic rocks. This metamorphism means normally if a children with a few amount, that means a few months period, his body having some quantity of glowiness and shape and sizes. After the year by year, automatically the baby having some deformation in their body according to the age. So that likely in our atmosphere also we are having few amount of mountains. So that in the starting stage of a mountain they are having some structural behavior, so that their particles are having some quantity of strength and parameters. After 1 year, due to the external environmental factors like wind, water and temperature and surrounding gaseous other vegetative matters, due to all of those there may be some quantity of decay or maybe some quantity of deposition. Normally decay means there may be decrement due to external parameters. Deposition means ఇంక్రిమెంట్ ఆఫ్ వాల్యూమ్ డ్యూ టు డిపాజిషన్. డిపాజిషన్ మీన్ మనకి క్వాంటిటీ ఆఫ్ అట్మాస్ఫియర్లో మనకి ఈ యొక్క ఎయిర్ వల్ల మనకి మట్టి ఇవన్నీ కూడా మ్యాటర్ మొత్తం కూడా కొండ మీద కొన్ని ఏరియాస్లో మనకి డిపాజిట్ అవుతూ ఉంటాయి. దాన్ని డిపాజిషన్ అంటాం. డికే మీన్స్ సింప్లీ ట్రాన్స్పోర్టింగ్ ఫ్రమ్ వన్ ప్లేస్ టు అనదర్ ప్లేస్. దోస్ మ్యాటర్ దట్ ఈస్ కాల్డ్ యాజ్ ద డికే అండ్ those matter will be deposited on a particular site, that is called as a deposition. All those things will be occurred in different stages of a particular mountain or any other soil or rock strata within their ages. That means if it is a newborn hill, it is in igneous form. After few years it is in sedimentary form. At the end of the age it is in metamorphic form. So that ages of the first means in the starting stage of a mountain it is in the form of igneous form. That means the mountain with huge quantity of temperature and flowingness. After few years are over, there may be no temperature. Why? Because due to atmospheric cooling agents, the total temperature in the igneous rocks will be cooled down and those may be strengthened due to this cooling. Those are called as sedimentary rocks. After few years, due to this wind, water and temperature and other atmospheric features, the total decay or deposition will be takes place. Those will be called as a metamorphism. Metamorphism means due to external parameters some quantity of decay or deposition takes place. That is called as a metamorphism formed from igneous and sedimentary rocks. What are the desirable properties? That means a desirable property and clean and free of clay and organic matter. Desirable means we need to require those quantities of features. It requires mainly clean and free of clay. Normally clean means without having any impurities. Impurities means if there may be some quantity of impurities in the structure, automatically due to those impurities the decay will takes place year by year, year by year, year by year. Normally if there is a steel structure, though the steel structure will be placed in the atmosphere due to sun's radiation and rainy water and other gases. That means In the atmosphere we are having some quantity of dew factor. In a cricket language, normally we are feeling this dew is there in the ground, so that ball was skidding and more rounds are coming automatically due to this dew factor. These dew factor also having some quantity of importance in our structures. Why? Because due to this dew, there will be some quantity of water vapor. Why? Because in the morning session we are having the sun's radiation on the atmosphere of our earth, so that whatever the water will having on the earth, those all will be converting into water vapor due to the temperature. Those water vapor will be moving on to the earth. Why? Because water vapor having less quantity of gravitational force, so that those water vapor will be converting into clouds at a certain stage. If there is some quantity of water vapor will not be converting into clouds, simply it will be moving on the earth's surface from one place to another place with the help of this wind, so that those water vapor will be moving, and simply if there is any tall structure or any huge amount of structures are there, automatically the wind will deposits those water vapor into the structure. నార్మల్గా మనకి కొన్ని ఏరియాస్లో మనకి వింటర్ సీజన్లో స్ట్రక్చర్స్ మొత్తం మీద కూడా మనకి తడి అనేది వస్తూ ఉంటుంది. వై? బికాస్ డ్యూ టు దిస్ డ్యూ ఫ్యాక్టర్ ద టోటల్ స్ట్రక్చర్ విల్ అబ్జార్బ్స్ ద వాటర్ కంటెంట్ ఇన్ ద atmosphere, and there may be some quantity of increment of volume to the walls. Likely if there is a steel structure, automatically the steel will absorbs the total water present in the atmosphere and it will decay. That means simply మనకి కరోడ్ అయిపోతూ ఉంటాయి, కలర్ చేంజ్ అవుతూ ఉంటుంది బిల్డింగ్స్కి. వై? బికాస్ డ్యూ టు దిస్ డిజైరబుల్ ప్రాపర్టీస్ ఇన్ ద atmosphere. Likely when we go to this transportation engineering, we have to use these aggregates, so that the aggregate must have free from these desirable properties. What are the desirable properties? Means first of all the aggregate must be free from the clay. Why? Because if you are constructing with the help of these aggregates, simply we are constructing a road with the help of these aggregates, so that if the aggregate having some quantity of impurities, automatically there may be application of load on the roads, so that due to this application of load on the road, automatically if there is a clay, the clay having some low quantity of these strengthening parameters, the clay will be decayed from the road due to this water. In rainy seasons there may be some quantity of pits or voids. మనకు కొన్ని ఏరియాలో రోడ్లు మనకి గుంతలుగా కనిపిస్తూ ఉంటాయి. ఎందువల్ల అంటే డ్యూ టు యూసేజ్ ఆఫ్ డిజైరబుల్ ప్రాపర్టీస్ ఆఫ్ అగ్రిగేట్స్. దట్ మీన్స్ అగ్రిగేట్స్ అనేవి మనకి సర్టెన్ క్వాంటిటీ మనం చూస్ చేసుకోకపోతే అటువంటి ఫార్మేషన్స్ అనేవి మనకు అబ్జర్వ్ అవుతూ ఉంటాయి. నెక్స్ట్ వన్, బీ యాంగులర్ అండ్ నాట్ ఫ్లేకీ. దట్ మీన్స్ ఫ్లేకీ మీన్స్ ద సైజ్ L/D ratio is very long. Those kind of aggregates we will call it as a flaky. It means the aggregates must be in angular shape. Why? Because if it is in not angular shape, I will show. Normally we are having different quantities of aggregates, so that the ends must be in angles. It is a normal quantity of aggregate. It means మనకి కంకర్ రాళ్ళు అంటూ ఉంటాం. ఆ కంకర్ రాళ్ళలో మనకి డిఫరెంట్ షేప్స్ అండ్ సైజెస్ అనేవి మనకి అబ్జర్వ్ అవుతూ ఉంటాయి, సో దట్ దోస్ షేప్స్ అండ్ సైజ్ విల్ ఇన్ ఏ ప్రాపర్ యాంగులర్ షేప్స్ ఓన్లీ. We won't use these rounded aggregates. Why? Because rounded aggregates having less quantity of friction, so that whenever we are mixing with binding materials, those rounded aggregates will not absorb those binding materials. Due to unabsorbance of binding material, there may be no compressive strength obtained. Whenever we are choosing aggregate with angular shapes, automatically one angular and another angular shape is likely. There may be some quantity of voids are there. Due to in the voids we have to use this binding material, so that the binding material will pick up all the angular particles in a proper shapes. Whenever we are using these round aggregates, automatically due to this round nature, there may be less quantity of friction between aggregate to aggregate, so that we will obtain less compressive strengths whenever we are using these rounded aggregates. We will go for this Angular aggregates automatically we will get definitely high strength. That is the difference between rounded aggregates and angular aggregates. After that, flakiness means if the size of the aggregate is very large, so that whenever the application of load is there, automatically it will converting into two parts, so that after the converting into two parts there may be bond breaking is there. Due to those also there may be some quantity of strength is reduced, so that we have to go and choose an angular aggregates without any flakiness. What are the desirable properties we have to require whenever we are constructing a road? Means first of all, it should be clean and free from clay and organic matter. Why we are telling you about this organic matter means whenever there is an organic matter in our construction materials, automatically those organic matter will leads to grow of వెజిటేటివ్ మ్యాటర్. నార్మల్గా మనకి కొన్ని ఇల్లు కట్టినప్పుడు ఆ ఇళ్ళల్లో మనకి రావి చెట్లు, డిఫరెంట్ పిచ్చి చెట్లు అనేవి వస్తూ ఉంటాయి. వై బికాస్ డ్యూ టు ద ప్రెజెన్స్ ఆఫ్ దిస్ ఆర్గానిక్ మ్యాటర్ దేర్ మే బి ఏ గ్రోయింగ్ ఆఫ్ దీస్ వెజిటేటివ్ ప్లాంట్స్ ఆన్ ద houses. That means the top surface of the houses on sides of the walls of the houses we are having these plants. Why? Because there may be some quantity of organic matter. Those organic matter simply useful for the growing of plant. It will be acts as a urea that or any other growing materials, so that we will have to choose a aggregate without having organic matter. Those will give huge amount of strength and lifespan of the structure. Next one is the strength parameters. First of all, we are constructing a road means automatically the road will have to bear huge quantity of compressive loads. Whenever the road have to compress means automatically we will have to choose a high strength aggregate. Otherwise, if we are choosing a low quantity aggregates or low quality aggregates, due to the rapid movement of the vehicles, the total strength will decrease in a within a lifespan. That means if the lifespan of a particular road is 10 to 15 years, within the 2 to 3 years the total road will decrease, so that we have to choose a strengthy aggregates. Next one is the hardness. Why we are mentioning hardness means the total vehicles are moving on the road with a proper friction in the tires. That means the tire have to move on the pavement with a applying some amount of friction on the surface. If there is no hardness of the aggregate, automatically the total surface is very smooth. Due to the smoothness there may be chance of occurring accidents, and there is no brakes applying on a particular surface. In some of the roads we are applying simply brakes and there is no grip to the tire, automatically those also leads to accidents there and traffic jams due to these conditions, so that we have to choose a particular hardness material. After the toughness means hardness is some quantity of value with respect to roughness, and next toughness means particle to particle friction. That is called as the toughness value. When we are keeping a two particles side by side, so that those will have some quantity of toughness value. After that, shape. Previously we discussed shape means we have to choose a angular aggregates, not a rounded aggregates. Next one, addition with bitumen. The total addition will be adhesion. Means whenever we are mixing a water with oil, there may be no mixing. Why? Because those two are polar solvent. That means non-polar liquids. That non-polar means one with another is not mixing. Why? Because water is a polar solvent and petroleum is a non-polar solvent, so that those two will not be mix each other. Likely we have to choose addition with bitumen means automatically we need to add those two things with the help of these binders. Next one, durability means against the environment we are having several environmental factors. The road will have to stay for years of time with proper strength by resisting these acid attacks and water absorbing capacities and other several environmental factors. Next one, be non-absorptive. Non-absorptive means previously water vapor. Normally in rainy seasons, there may be flow of water on the surface of the roads, so that the aggregates will not absorb water content. If the aggregates will absorb, automatically there may be swelling or shrinkage. Due to the swelling and shrinkage, there may be unevenness and irregularities will be appeared on the surface, so that the aggregates will be non-absorptive, be resistant to abrasion or exposure to traffic. Abrasion means friction. Against this exposure to traffic, there is a huge quantity of traffic, automatically second by second the tire force is applying on a particular road surface, so that the material will have to bear those pressures. Next one, freedom from detritus particles. Detritus particles means if there is any acid, automatically when we pour some quantity of acid on a surface, automatically we will observe bubbles will comes from the material. Why? Because those acid will leach the total surface, and simply it will give a reaction with the help of acids. That means chemical nature. Automatically due to those acid attacks, the total surface will be decayed, so that we need to prevent by using those kind of detritus particles in the structures.